Welcome everyone to the CDF member webinar series. Today we have our ambassador Garima presenting the continuous product-oriented practice, and she also has two of her colleagues from Carbon Capital joining her today. It's Steve and William. Steve and William. So welcome, and I hope you enjoy our webinar today. So kick it off, Garima.
Yeah, thank you very much, first of all, for inviting us. It has been a pleasure being associated with Continuous Delivery Foundation. You guys are doing a great job, so kudos to you. Before we start this webinar, I think I would like to introduce myself and the team. So I'm based out of Canada, Ottawa, and talking about myself, Garima Bajpai, and one of the co-founders for the DevOps Summit, which happens in Canada. I'm also co-founder for the DevOps Meetup, which happens in Canada, the community of practice for DevOps. I am DevOps Ambassador with Continuous Delivery Foundation as well as DevOps Institute. Also, my professional associations, I belong to two different boards of two different companies. They are startup companies. One is a Momentum startup, Capital Carbon Consulting, which is heavily invested in DevOps, and I sit on the board of this company. I'm also associated with Health 4.0 Leadership Institute, which is an early stage startup. And this is where my experience comes from, building up startup, small, medium enterprises. I've also been part of big, mature businesses for 20 odd years. So I also kind of understand where IT and IT solutions and digital solutions are taking us. So that's a little background about myself. Now I give the stage to Steve. Steve, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Steve. I worked with Capital Carbon Consulting with Garima and William. So talking about myself, I have been working in the IT industry for 20 years. And I have my own e-business, e-commerce business in China for 5 years. So that is my first journey, and we grow from five employees at the beginning, and then after only 2 years, we grow to 1,600 employees. So that's a huge change to my startups. So a lot of things I want to share. And this is my first journey. And after I sold my own company, I worked as a agile consultant. So for the recent 10 years. So this is basically my second journey.
Great. And William, do you want to say a few words before we start?
Sure. Yeah, my name is William Satoshi. Originally electrical engineer. I became interested in IT and got into programming development, and then moved more into project management, working in a few different industries in financial services, in HR and in healthcare areas. I really became interested in diversity and the development and in the operations side. So DevOps is a natural for me. And meeting with Steve and Garima in the last year, became interested in the CPOP concept, and am enjoying the journey with them. So looking forward to it.
Thank you very much. So let's quickly get on to the topic. Today's topic is continuous product-oriented practice. And what we are trying to do here is to introduce the audience with a playbook. Before we actually get going, I also wanted to talk a few words about Capital Carbon Consulting. So this company, as I said, is a Momentum startup company. We are heavily invested in DevOps certifications. We also do SRE certification accredited by DevOps Institute. We have created continuous product-oriented practice, which we will talk about today. We are also doing a couple of initiatives around digital accelerators and also creating virtual policy labs for software companies. So that is something which we can take up later, but this is what we do as CCC. Having said that, what makes us unique is what we are doing in Canada is we have been associated with a large set of startups, and we are helping these startups to gain momentum. When you interact with a wide range of startups which are doing digital solutions and they are diverse in nature, we come across a lot of different problems. But what essentially we actually come across is some common threads, and that is where the continuous product-oriented practice was originated from. So we will talk about a little bit more detail about the tools and techniques which are being used in this practice. Having said that, we, as I mentioned, we are ambassadors for the product-oriented mindset. We are invested in DevOps, and we co-innovate with startups. Lastly, we are also in a huge promoter of open source, open communities, and I do belong to the ambassador group where open source, open communities, open projects are being built up. So that's where our passion belongs. Now, let's talk about continuous product-oriented practice. As I said, that we actually meet up a lot of startups. And the common thread actually, which we have got from these startups is that they're introducing a lot of products. Now we will talk about like our key learnings in this journey and how we initiated this practice. But the key theme across this practice is that we are trying to build products the DevOps way. And you might ask me, what is DevOps way, right? So DevOps way to me is basically building collaboration and building teams who can build products. They can develop products and they can speak to the operations team and do operations. So they are bridging the gap between development and operations. Now, as DevOps has gained momentum, people have understood and actually, at least, if not close the gap, but they have been discussing how to close the gap between development and operations. But what we have seen working with these startups and small businesses, that there's a larger gap in strategy, planning, and inception stages. And this is where continuous product-oriented practice comes in. It builds that momentum, not only from development and operations perspective, but also how to fill that gap and bridge that silo which has been created within the organization from a strategy functions perspective, from a planning perspective, from a design perspective. And I would advocate this is a case of exponential change. And why I'm saying that is that we have been incrementally improving the collaboration between development and operations organization. But now it's our time to take an exponential leap into improvement, how we build products. Now, taking a step back from where we started, when me and Steve, one day, I think it was somewhere in December before the Christmas holidays, we were discussing a lot of things about, Chinese startups and, startups in India and how we see startups happening in North America. We actually found a common thread, and that's the common thread was basically, around why products or why features fail. And we identified some key points where the products were failing for these startups, these small businesses, and even mature businesses. So to introduce you with this idea is that we found out that there was no unified way of identifying value. So if one function was imagining a value in the system of products or features, it was not translated in a good way to the development organization, to the operations organization, and the feedback channel was not there. So we actually found out that was one of the primary reasons why product failed. Also, there was no way where we actually can assess why the return of investments were delayed, especially for these like small medium enterprises which are continuously working on MVPs. So they were not able to find solid reasons around it, like why they are not able to realize their ROI. The business was changing faster than the features were developed, and I'm not the only one saying that, but the fact of what we actually discussed was why that was happening. That was happening because the linear shift towards lifestyle is no longer there. So people have started to shift their lifestyles exponentially. The trajectory is exponential, so as the need of actually digital solutions and products. So when you think about that, you automatically get to a point that it, there is a level of uncertainty in, how products and features will be used, and the time span of these digital solutions are being reduced. So that's one other area. And lastly, we also actually, this was like a common understanding that we had found in different parts of the world. These companies actually discuss that, we have implemented Agile and DevOps, last year, but how to generate revenue out of an MVP is not known, or the results which were expected from a DevOps transformation initiative or Agile transformation initiative was not accomplished. So these are the kind of factors which we believed that why the products or the features were not picking up, and they were kind of failing. And there where we actually started to kind of scribble that how should we tackle this problem, and we created this continuous product oriented practice. Now, to give you a brief background about this practice, is this practice advocates transforming the qualitative way how we build products to a quantitative way. And you will ask what it means. So basically what we are doing is identifying and measuring a value in this practice. So we give score to each value and track them in this practice from inception to operations, and eliminate the silos by integrating strategy, inception, planning, design, development, and operations through a uniform value radar. Now, this becomes a very academic definition if I do not, introduce you to the tools and techniques, right? And you will ask me like, how is it related to DevOps? So I'll proceed in this presentation, and I will introduce some of the tools and techniques which we are using in this practice. The journey of building products is very interesting, and it's not an easy one. So we will need a lot of tools and a lot of techniques, and these tools and techniques have to be integrated in one way. So now I give the forum to Steve to discuss about the product canvas and the practices and the core behind this whole continuous product oriented practice. So Steve, over to you.
Okay, thank you, Garima. So as you can see, this picture described a line. So behind this picture is a lot of suffering day and night. So let's back to 12 years before. As I said, I have my own e-commerce business in China for 5 years, and that is 12 years before. We started the business from only 5 employees, but after two years, we grow to 1,600 employees. So I like here I like to share some lessons from those 5 years I got. At first, when every requirements to my desk, I took it as a project. So I just assign developers and working on that project and track the status every week. And I can say that that worked very well when we have only 20 employees. And I got new requirements every 2 weeks. But when we grow to 100 employees, they gave me new requirements every week, not every 2 weeks, every week. We have my department, all the developers have the new requirements. And after we have 300 employees, my department, the R&D department, got a new requirement every single day. So every day we got a lot of requirements from different departments. At that time, I only have 30 developers, and everyone worked 15 hours a day, but we still have a long waiting list there. So that's suffering. One day after work, one developer told me that he wants to quit, and he is a very good developer, and he was my friend, and I couldn't persuade him to stay. That makes me very, very sad. At that night, I told myself, Steve, you can't take all the requirement. Your team will crash. And you only need to work on the valuable requirements. So that was the first time I thought about the product value. And that was the first time I take the project into a product. And so this story is about 12 years before. And after I sold my company for five years, I worked as a consultant for another 10 years. So recent 10 years, I am a consultant of Agile and DevOps. So I have some clients from the big companies and some from the startups, some of them in China and some of them in Canada. And also I noticed that no matter how big is a company and no matter how many developers they have, no client told me he has enough developers. And I told them it is not about the resource issues. That's because people have too many ideas. The business people have too many ideas. Every second they will have a new idea and they want all the ideas developed. So that is a major reason. That is a major reason the developers always feel exhausted, and the company always feel they have not enough developers. So what is behind this picture? I want to share some of my my thought. So when we think about what is a product, after so many day and night suffering, the product to me is like a line. The blue line produce values, and the materials are people's ideas. So ideas in and the potential values out. All the developers and the team are the line workers. That is the concept I got those 10 years. So the goal for the company is to keep the line efficient. There are 3 golden rules. The first rule is identify the correct ideas, not let the non-valuable ideas in the product line. Because when a bad idea goes to the line, everyone will work on the bad idea without any value produced. That is the first rule. And the second, release the product as quick as possible. That is the only path to win. The longer the product in the line, the more risks when the product is published, because we know the marketing changes every day, every second. We can't wait for half a year for a feature to be released. And the third rule is about collect the feedback, measure the potential values, then generate your new ideas based on the feedback. So only with this blue line in your mind, you can develop a sustainable product. That is my suggestion. And now the continuous product-oriented practice can do you a favor to let your line stick into the 3 golden rules. So that is my two journey and 2 stories behind the picture. Okay, so I'll let Garima to continue.
Thank you, Steve. And when I bring up these ideas for Capital Carbon Consulting, when Steve says, I'll think about it, that means he is assessing the product line. So he often does that to me as well. So we are applying this in our own business. So now coming back to, what Steve has described, this is a product canvas which we have created in this practice. This product canvas, if you see on the right-hand side, there are certain tools and techniques, which we will explain. Some of these key tools and techniques, which we'll try to explain in the upcoming slides. So when we are evaluating the ideas, we have created tools and techniques, and of course, some of these tools and techniques are already available, which we have integrated from outside. So we create the product vision with the help of the team which we are working with. We also help create the value radar for the product. We also do some product box design. So these are the early practices which we help our customers evaluating these ideas. When it comes to how fast you can develop these ideas, we have a couple of practices, and this is like both in design and development phases. So from a design perspective, product value design is an extremely important activity which you need to perform when you're assessing any of the products or features in the pipeline. We use business model design to integrate the value proposition of the designed value for the product. We also have integrated user research techniques, user journey maps and design. And lastly, we have introduced one of the most important investment model, which is FRED, which I will talk about it later in this discussion. When it comes to development and operations, because when you think about the product as a product canvas and start looking at the values as a system, then you will realize that the development and the operations organization go hand in hand with what we are producing as a value, right? So all the feature design, the concepts which we have from a technology perspective, our CI/CD pipeline, the architecture of our feature and applications which we are producing becomes extremely important, because we need to loosely couple our features to introduce it in increments, right? And having said that, we also have produced like morph charts, which will help you speed up the process of development and operations, and introduce some of the tools which you will need in order to integrate that DevOps practices into your product line. And lastly, feature release strategy. It's extremely important to assess what is your release strategy for these products. If you want to do some kind of feature toggles or some kind of user segment mapping around features, all this is very context driven, but it's important as well. When you come to operations, it becomes important that whatever data you have, your data has to tell a story, right? So you have to bring that data-driven approach to everything what you are assessing and evaluating. You should be having empirical data to back you up in decision-making process. And lastly, value-based pricing. So we will be able to assess and gauge where the value of the product is belonging, what kind of features are more valuable to the user, and that will set the stage of, moving away from cost-based to a value-based structure. And this all together creates a product canvas. Now, I would like to move ahead in this presentation. And as I mentioned, product value design is one of the most critical techniques which we are introducing here. And designing value in the product is a key step, and helping you answer the first question in the product canvas: is it a good idea? And when we are assessing that product value, we are actually measuring 5 dimensions to balance this value through this canvas. And these 5 values are put on the right hand side of the slide, which is primarily like stability and security being one of them, cost, speed, scalability, and learning curve. Now, if you think about it, if you're working with a startup or a small business, what is more important for those businesses is the pilot process, right? Stability and scalability are not their top priorities, and but cost and liquidity are, right? So you need to have a value radar which can balance the priority of a business from where they are, a context-driven mapping. When we come to a mature business, a mature enterprise, as opposed to startups, what we have seen is that stable capacity and balancing the learning curve is their high priorities. So we need to kind of ensure that whatever product value we are designing, we keep in consideration the context. So that's some of the key, consideration when we are designing the product value composition. Now, it doesn't become an academic exercise. That's why I'm also mentioning that we have a value design matrices, which are part of this product canvas and continuous product oriented practice. So what these value design matrices would do for the product team, it provides them with a value measurement toolbox and help them answer the second question, that how fast you can deliver. It also quantifies the value points and creates the value tags for each user story in the Kanban board, simply aggregating the value tag and status cards. And if you think about it, what it is doing is the key benefits of these matrices are like balancing the value delivery towards the target user. That's first and foremost. But you will also be able to identify uncommon velocity issues, predict product shippable time, and prioritize not overdoing too much of value. Because if you are in a stage of delivering an MVP, delivering too much value is not good news, right? So you'll have to assess that as well, and these matrices will provide you support in that decision-making process. Lastly, but how to assess slowly decreasing the cost of each value point. So the idea is that we have to be more efficient and build a system where our return of investment is faster and quicker. So these matrices will support you in this decision-making process. We have workshops and we have done like hands-on session with like enterprises where we have helped people delivering these value design matrices for them. Moving on, I would also like to introduce the investment strategy board, which we have created. And this investment strategy board is comprising of, it's a complementary technique which provides tangible way to steer investments towards value. Now, let me explain this to you, because what investment means here is that when you are developing a feature or a product, you not only are investing in CapEx, you're also investing in OpEx. So you need to consider 4 dimensions whenever you're building a product or a feature. Features, of course, because features are something which bring value to the target user. Then you will have risk associated with those features, right? You will have defects, which are bugs primarily, or features that do not pass acceptance testing. And then lastly, you'll have depths. Depths are temporary workarounds, or creating a quick product decision where you are trying to solve a potential issue. So these 4 aspects, and we have named it as FRED. Now, in this context, only feature is valuable, and everything else does not add value, but cause longer lead time. So what it means is that we are investing in not only features, but risks, defects, and depths. So we need to understand that one feature, how many risks are we introducing, how many defects we have, what kind of depth we are introducing, so that we have an overall view of how much investment we are doing for one feature. And this, if you think about this and you have an ongoing data and dashboard around FRED, you will be able to analyze that which features are good to have, which features are important, and which features do not contribute into your revenue chain. So that's extremely important from a product perspective. Now, moving on, there are product value feedback loops. And this is basically there because it helps you answer the 3rd question in the product canvas. Is it really a good idea? That means what it builds in is empirical data towards the decision-making process. So if you want to steer an organization to a data-driven organization, I think it's a very valuable technique which we are introducing. It talks about 3 things actually: creating stories around data, which is basically translating your whatever data you are gathering from a customer point of view, and to easily understandable insights to influence action and business decisions. The second part is evaluating and building a value-driven pricing strategy for features, utilizing customer data, breakdown of relative value of different features, and of course, your investment towards one feature. So that plays an important role in that as well. And lastly, developing a continuous product canvas. So it's important that you have continuous flow of features in the pipeline, the innovative features which should continuously be quantifiable and have a value-driven approach towards whatever you are introducing as features. So these are the 3 things. And when you build a connection between DevOps and continuous product oriented practice, I would suggest that we discuss it from 2 perspectives. One is the culture basics. When we talk about continuous product oriented practice, we are also talking about and advocating upskilling individuals, teams, and leaders to adopt basic techniques for maximizing outcome. And these techniques comprise of DevOps practices. These techniques comprise of agile practices. These techniques, advocate for bringing smaller increments to user visibility. So that's where the connection is from a cultural standpoint. Now, when you talk about DevOps practices in CPOP context, we will also try to introduce you to morph charts. Basically, what we have done is we have created morph charts which are supporting your decision making around tools and capabilities which are needed to be brought in from DevOps perspective to ensure that a particular feature is well designed, delivered, and operated. And we have enough insight about that feature. So we would need some specific tools, some specific applications, and these tools and applications can be integrated as an out-of-box integration, or we can also have capabilities produced in-house, right? It depends on, what kind of capabilities you would need in order to develop these features. And just to make it more clear that, how DevOps and CPOP is associated, as we started in the beginning, that what DevOps has done is primarily discussed how to close the gap between development and operations. not much has been done in order to close the gap between strategy and planning. And what we are trying to do with CPOP is taking one step further and trying to integrate strategy, planning, and design decision into one context and make them work hand in hand with DevOps teams. So that is what the vision for CPOP is. And of course, this slide also depicts that what kind of practices and tools are applicable to which roles in the organization. So I think we're coming to the end of the presentation, but I would like to also emphasize that what we are doing here with CPOP is we're not creating like a certification or a course. We are actually helping organization by making them learn by doing, right? So we have created use cases and we have done workshops around startups within healthcare sector, with fintech, and we are also building up use cases for sports tech industry, agri-tech, AI products, and customized cases. The beauty of CPOP is that it can be implemented or integrated with any kind of industry segment. It does not matter. It's a practice which where if you start thinking about your projects in terms of products, you will be able to leverage the CPOP practice and the tools and techniques which we are advocating for. Our approach, as I said, this is a practice. So we advocate for value product management, and it requires a data-driven, structured approach of tools and techniques to support the process and the team. And how would we do that is to adopt tools and techniques for everyone in the team, where everyone in the team needs to learn by doing, right? And what can be the next steps with us is you can get in touch with us for a workshop. We have continuous oriented, product oriented basic workshops which will get you introduced to all these techniques and concepts. And of course we do simulation cases, so we simulate one application in one workshop so that we actually do use the tools and techniques which we are advocating for to make you learn how you can actually make use of them in your context. We also offer virtual CIO and virtual product owner capabilities because we do understand this is a large learning curve for some of the organizations, and they might need support in the journey of the learning process. CPOP platform is readily integrated with the concepts and techniques, and we are actually heavily invested in building this platform as we speak. So having said that, some words from our customers. It's always good to get acknowledgement from our customers, and it's pleasure seeing that our customers feel that we have created some value for them. So this is from one of our customers who took our workshop last week. It's pretty fresh. This is last slide. I think this is something which we always do. We want people to get acquainted with our events. We have a DevOps community of practice meetup group where you can join in and get more insights into what continuous product oriented practice is and how is it connected with DevOps. We also have a DevOps continuous product oriented practice workshop, which is coming up 27th of June. We are taking a financial application as one of the simulation cases, and we'll run end to end to build value driven products. And lastly, I would say that I invite you all to the DevOps Summit 2020 Ottawa. Ottawa is a hub of startups, and I would like you to join us for the DevOps Summit 2020. We have so many interesting workshops, talks, as well as fun activities. I hope you will get great learning and get great networking opportunities. Lastly, if you're keen and interested in volunteering with us, our contact details are in line. Okay, so then I give it over to you, Jacqueline, if we have any questions or room for any questions.